to what we have come here tonight. It has been advertised as a forum for autism. And I must say, for too long, we have ignored this community. We have not tried to understand them and meet them where they are. So tonight we are honored to have two special people that will share with us how we can better be acquainted with what they do and how they do it. I hope by the end of the session that they would have given us tools that we can utilize to really, how can I put it, get down on the level of where these special people are. Somebody say they're special. I'm telling you, I think we have the wrong concept. They are some very special people. And I just really want us, from this point on, give our attention to our presenters. Please, y'all, come on up. They're going to introduce themselves. They're going to let you know who they are, where they come from, and what they represent, and how they want you all tonight.
Thank you. I could not have said that better myself. That was beautiful. I do not feel qualified to be right here, right now. But my name is Jamie Holmes, and this is Sarah Young. We're both occupational therapists, and we'll kind of tell you, if you're not familiar what occupational therapy is, we'll tell you a little bit about what we do every single day with kids. And our presentation today, I labeled it neurodiversity from an OT's perspective, with the focus being autism, but just know that ADHD kind of falls under that neurodiversity. Anxiety even follows under neurodiversity. And we'll kind of get into the details of that, but we're going to focus on autism, but just know that that term is kind of all-encompassing. So if you kind of have questions in your head as we go that relate to things other than autism, just know you can ask that too at the end. Okay, next slide. And these are the places that we work. So I probably should have said that. I own Empower Pediatric Therapy, so it's a small occupational therapy only pediatric clinic where we work with kids 0 to 21 on kind of life skills. Think for kids, play. That's their main job, their occupation. Play, activities of daily living, getting up, brushing their teeth, brushing their hair, taking a bath, all things like that. Fine motor skills, visual motor skills, that we need to do all of those things that we probably all take for granted unless you've had a personal experience with a parent or a kid in your life who's struggled in those areas. You take it for granted. So we help kids do all those things in daily life. And then Sarah just started a nonprofit, and I'll let you tell you a little bit about that.
Another OT and I started a nonprofit called Community Sprouts, and we are offering play groups for kids of all abilities. It's right now only ages 2 through 5. It's a drop-off play group, $20 per child. 2 through 3, it's an hour long, and then 3 through 5, it's an hour and a half long. And all our groups have themes, and we have activities that myself and the other OT have designed to target some of these fine motor, visual motor, sensory, just social skills, emotional regulation. That's a huge thing with a lot of our kiddos. Really just being a human. It's hard to regulate your emotions sometimes. So that's what Community Sprouts is here to help with, and just kind of be a middle person between the medical world and the community. So
and we've been friends. We actually met through OT. We've been friends for a long time, but between the two of us, we probably have 15, 16, 17 years of experience between the two of us. So we've been working with kids for a while. She's been doing it longer than me, but I was crazy enough to start a clinic.
yes.
But it's been so rewarding, and we meet the coolest little kids ever. And the coolest grandparents ever. And parents. So that's a little bit about us. Does anybody, do y'all know what occupational therapy is? Has anybody had a personal experience with occupational therapy? Okay. Can people raise their hand if they've had a personal experience with occupational therapy? Okay. Was it with kids or adults? Kids. Okay. a lot of people will say like a parent had a stroke or something and they got OT in the hospital. So OT is across the lifespan, but we're going to talk mostly about kids today. And then I also want to ask too, does everybody in here have a personal experience with autism? Does everybody have a personal experience with autism? I'm assuming that's probably why a lot of people are here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just want to know who I'm talking to. If you'll go to the next slide, I think it actually might have. Okay, so here's just a quick overview, mostly to keep me on track. But if you have questions, this is kind of the flow we're going to do. We're going to talk about definitions, just so we're all on the same page with what neurodiversity is, what autism is. We're going to kind of view autism from an autistic person's view, because sometimes it's really hard for them to communicate how they experience the world, but this individual has been able to do that, and she actually has a really cool story. If anybody wants to look her up on YouTube, her name's Carly. We'll get into that, because I think part of our work and our responsibility is to really see things from their perspective, knowing and acknowledging that we do not understand what their experience is, and how can we meet them halfway between our expectations and what their needs are.
I think historically in the past, all the focus has been on the individual that has autism or whatever neurodiversity, has been on them to change and them to like convert to our norms, and it's showing that that's really not the best way. It needs to be two people meet in the middle, a little bit of understand each other's perspectives, and just realize that we do have a different nervous system and we do think differently, and that's okay.
Yeah, and collaborate in that process and try to learn the best way to communicate with these kids and adults. They're going to grow up to be adults. And yeah, how we can best support them and how they can best support us. It goes both ways, especially into adulthood. We're going to talk about this thing called the double empathy problem. Talk about connection, understanding, and acceptance, which Pastor Haynes kind of alluded to is a big piece of this. Hierarchy of needs, the different sensory needs. We all have sensory needs, and I have a fun activity that we're going to see what some of the sensory needs are in here, because we all have them, whether you realize it or not. Emotional regulation tips and tricks. And then I'm not going to go too deep into sensory-based strategies. If you guys have any specific questions at the end, I do have slides on them, but I didn't want anybody to like be bored if they're like, that's not a challenge that my kid has, because it is very individualized, very specific to your kid. If you have an experience with someone with autism, you know their needs are different from this child's needs with autism. They're all different, which is why individual care is super helpful to kind of get to the core of what's going on, especially if their sensory needs are resulting in behaviors out in public or at school or like at home.
Hurting themselves even.
Yeah. Yep. We get really curious in OT. We're like, okay, why did they do that? Versus like, that was not good. You know, like, well, why? You're trying to communicate something to me by doing that. And that's sometimes all kids know to do is hit or go run away. That's all they know to do if they don't have the words to tell you, you know, I didn't like that, or that was too loud for me, or I didn't like the way that felt, stuff like that. Okay, next slide. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, just a few definitions so we're all on the same page. Briefly discuss this, but neurodiversity is the idea that the human brain works differently, like each person's brain works differently. There's no single normal. What does that even mean? For a brain to work, learn, or behave. Instead, differences are just natural variations. There's lots of things that can affect our brain. The number one thing I learned from OT school was we really don't know much about the brain at all. We're just a shot in the dark. Everybody's different. And so we just have to learn how each person's brain works and operates, how they tick. Autism is defined as a neurodevelopmental variation affecting how people interact, communicate, learn, and experience the world. It exists on a broad spectrum, which is why if you get an autism diagnosis, the doctor will call it autism spectrum disorder. There's different levels of autism. We kind of don't love that in OT. It tells you a little bit about the person, but a kid is not a number. Like there's levels 1, 2, 3. Whenever I get a referral, I almost don't even look at that.
I don't look at it.
Yeah.
I've seen level 1 and a child presented a certain way, and then level 2. I can't find a rhyme or reason for it. So to me, it doesn't really mean much.
Yeah, it doesn't change how we are going to interact with them, approach them. We're going to assume they're competent and then meet them where they're at if they're not quite understanding what we're getting at. Yeah, and every individual has unique strengths. And a lot of our friends that have autism have really strong passions. Like I can think of one little boy who loves letters. He can write his name. He can write the ABCs. He loves numbers. I didn't know my ABCs when I was 3. So such strong strengths. And then in other areas, maybe have some difficulties, as we all do. But our society has told us that is different or not as good as the next person, but really it's just different. And then I did throw ADHD on here just because I feel like it's very prevalent. If anybody has taken a child to the pediatrician, that is a term that's really thrown out a lot, especially now. Kids have a lot more distractions now than they ever have too, so I just wanted to include that too. A neurodevelopmental variation related to the brain's executive dysfunction and dopamine regulation, so you'll see issues with attention, activity levels, and impulse control. That's a big one, especially in school. Next slide, if you don't mind. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so we're going to show a really short video. It's like 2 minutes. This is a little girl. She's not little anymore. She's an adult now, but at the time she was, I think, 14. And it shows how she feels her sensory experience while she is in a coffee shop. So how many of you have been in a coffee shop before? Or ordered your coffee. You probably didn't even really notice the grinding in the background, the music playing. Maybe you did. All the people talking. So the clinking of the cups.
Silverware.
A neurotypical brain can filter a lot of those things out, and an autistic person's brain can't sometimes. Not always. Again, everybody is different, but this is her perspective of how that experience felt to her. So if you'll go to that video.
Skim.
Hot chocolate, orange juice.
No, Dad, I want a coffee. Hot chocolate? Great.
So I was thinking of going to Sarah's later. Could you give me a ride?
Yeah, sure. Are you cool with taking your sister?
Yeah.
Wait, what? I have my own plan.
Carly.
Okay, I'll see you tonight, okay?
Focus. Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. Carly. How can I help?
So if that sparks any kind of interest, this young lady is very cool. She's a non-speaking autistic person, and I say autistic first. I feel like I should have probably said that from the beginning. Adults with autism prefer you to say
what may be the most
autistic person versus person with autism because they truly feel like it's part of their identity. There's been a lot of research about that. So a lot of, like I said, adults prefer that. So that's what we try to honor that in our everyday practice by saying autistic person. She's an autistic person who's non-speaking, but they figured out when she was like 14 or 15, I think, that she could type. No one had ever shown her that. And she typed a whole thing. She'd been listening the whole time. I think we're very quick to talk about things in front of our kids and just assume they're not taking it in, especially if they're not responding to us the way we think they should. They're taking it all in. Y'all be careful what you say. They're taking it all in and feeding off of it. And she, if you go on YouTube, they've got a bunch of different things on her, like her whole story.
There's another video on there, and I want to point out also, well, before I get into that, well, no, I'll just keep going. There's another video on there where she's like saying how it talks about she was a headbanger, and she was like, I know I shouldn't hit my head. I know I shouldn't bang it, but I feel like if I don't do it, then I'm going to explode. So again, just like verifying her existence and her perspective of the world and what she's going through, where, you know, we might be like, well, how would she do that? Why would she do that? Well, there is a reason. And then in the video, I don't know if y'all noticed, as her communicate, like she had these thoughts of what she wanted to do. She had this mental plan, but she had no way at that time of getting that out, letting anybody know. So as like she was being misunderstood more and more, the sensory experiences started getting louder and more intense. And so that's when, at the end of the video, I think it like shows her knocking over the coffee cup. You know, again, from our perspective, on the outside, might be like, oh, you know, she just threw over that coffee cup for no reason. Well, she had very good reasons, and I guarantee you, each one of us would feel the same way if we wanted a coffee and somebody gave us a hot chocolate. So I just, again, think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, especially when there's a communication breakdown. And a lot of, not a lot, but a decent amount of kids now, especially if they're in the public schools, are getting these devices called AAC devices. It looks like an iPad, but they use it for communication, and that has opened up a lot of doors. We've both worked in the public school system, in the preschool classes specifically, and seen a lot of kids really take to those and lean on those to communicate their wants and their needs. It might not be what you want them to be communicating, but who are we to tell them what to say, you know? If they want goldfish and they want to tell you 25 times, they're going to tell you 25 times on their AAC device that they want goldfish, even if it's out of context. But that's pretty age appropriate, too, if you're 3, you know? I have a 4-year-old at home, and she's asked me at least 25 times if she wants a snack. So, yeah, just, again, meeting them where they're at communication-wise, sensory-wise, and yeah, I think my next slide might be about sensory, if you can go to the next slide. But keeping in mind this perspective. Oh, okay. The double empathy problem. So this is a theory stating that communication breakdowns between autistic and non-autistic or neurotypical people are a two-way street. Both groups struggle to understand and empathize with each other because they have different ways of experiencing the world and communicating. And that video is a perfect example of that. So we have certain expectations probably in our brain based on how we were raised or what we learned in school. Well, so do they. And sometimes if those don't match up, that's where we get frustration. That's where we get dysregulation, both from the autistic person and the non-autistic person. Because if you're trying to settle a dysregulation, a meltdown, that's very dysregulating for you too as the adult. So again, getting curious about, okay, why, what triggered this, and why am I so triggered by this? Anything to add about that?
Well, just to like hone back at the point where This came from a study where they grouped people with autism together and then neurotypicals together. They had both groups rate their like social experiences, and then they had the groups intermingle and rate their social experiences. And both groups had higher ratings when they were amongst their peers. So that just shows that a neurotypical may say that they don't have good social skills. However, when they're amongst others with autism or similarities, that population doesn't feel that way. So that's where it's coming from a cultural difference, like just being mindful of their social norms.
Yeah. Yeah. So what that means, just to kind of summarize, is autistic people enjoy being around other autistic people, which is where I feel like Community Sprouts is going to be huge for our community. They're still very new, but the hope is that they can find their people maybe in these groups.
And also very much neurotypical kids to be able to relate to kids with autism and have positive experiences.
Yep.
And again, teach this double empathy problem and teach that it's okay to be different.
Yeah, and accept each other right where you are with an adult there to co-regulate and kind of guide the interactions, because kids, they don't know unless they're explicitly taught sometimes these things, or if they've never had an experience like that. Yep. Okay, next slide. Yes. Okay. So connection, understanding, and acceptance. These are, we feel, key. Connection before compliance. A lot of older school therapists, they just want you to meet your goals and sit down and do this work. Well, new research has come out that says if you don't have the connection and the trust before you have those higher level expectations, you're going to get nowhere. They have to, just like any other person, an autistic person needs to feel that you accept them, that you're trying to understand them, you're trying to build a relationship with them for who they are, because we're not going to change the fact that they have autism. Their brain is literally wired differently. But they can feel, and it's so evident when we do what we do.
Oh, yeah.
Like when the breakthrough happens, like it's normally after the first couple of sessions and we're playing, they don't realize they're doing all these fine motor things too. And then, they'll either kind of look at you or giggle at you or come into your space and they've never done that before. And you're like, oh, we got it. We can do something now. But if you don't have that connection, it's so hard to make progress.
I think that's with anybody in
Yeah.
any relationship. I think
Yeah.
we could all probably relate to that.
And just a little quote, I don't know if everybody can read that, but it says, right from the start, from the time someone came up with the word autism, the condition has been judged from the outside by its appearances and not from the inside, according to how it is experienced.
I also think I've learned the coolest things about kids and like really what they're capable of when you do kind of let down the expectations and just follow their lead and get into their world a little bit. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Next slide. Okay, I threw this on here too. So, are people familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You probably learned about it in like 6th grade. Safety is kind of at the bottom, shelter, food, and then everything else that you need in life is kind of above that. But if you don't feel safe and you don't have shelter over your head and you don't have food in your belly, you can't learn. The same is true of our autistic friends and any human.
Yes.
We have that central nervous system, so that's kind of where OT lives. Like, we're trying to make sure your nervous system is feeling good so that we can learn the skills we need to learn, is at the very bottom. That, to me, is kind of where safety lies, too, because if you're in what we call fight or flight, we've all been there, like when you've gotten really scared before, or what's another example of fight or flight?
Somebody cut you off. And
Somebody
you're
cut
really
you off on the
mad,
road,
or
yeah,
you're
and you're
scared.
Yeah, you can't think straight. You probably don't make the best decisions when you're in that mode. Same is true with our autistic friends, and they're in fight or flight much more
yeah.
than the average person, is what adults that have autism have said. So we've got to address those things first before we can expect anything else. You can kind of see up above that is kind of our motor development, perceptual development, so like ocular, motor, eye stuff, attention, and at the very top is learning. And obviously that's our end goal, is for them to learn new skills like at school and in OT and out in the community and at church. But if they're not regulated, just think if you had too much coffee and you're just like jittery, you're probably not in the best state to learn. So our goal is that regulation piece at the very bottom of the pyramid.
You're late for a hair appointment, and then somebody sits you down to like listen to us talk for an hour, like you're like, I gotta go, like you're not really here.
Yeah, you're here, but you're not here.
So like again, they're kids, they're humans, they have these plans, they have these whole like scenarios happening in their head that we might not know, but they have a plan, they got something to do. And so sometimes when we interrupt that plan, we see behavior, but that's their way of communicating.
Yep. Next slide. Okay, so now this is where we nerd out. So if it gets too much, just say, "Whoa, it's Jamie." Just pause right there. I'm trying to keep it simple because it's really not that simple. Like, humans are complicated. But sensory processing, the general definition, is the ability to take in information from the environment and our bodies and respond to that information appropriately. Probably the classic senses that people are most familiar with: sight, smell, sound, hearing things, taste, and touch. Those are like kind of the outer sensory classic senses. And then there are also internal senses. Your vestibular system, it's actually housed in your inner ear. If you've ever gone on a swing as an adult and you start to feel sick, that's your vestibular system is real rusty. And I can tell you, I immediately get nauseous when I get on a swing now. My vestibular system is not good anymore. But that can affect you. That can cause vertigo, things like that. That's an internal sense. Proprioceptive. So proprioception is knowing where your body is in space. A lot of our friends with autism struggle with that. They often have gross motor delays and might need PT. They might walk on their tippy toes. They're trying to figure out, okay, where is my body in space? Some of them like to spin. Where is my body in space?
It's almost like, have you ever woken up and like your arm's been so dead that like you literally try to pick it up and it just kind of flops around and you're like, you don't know where that part of your arm is in relationship to the rest of your body? That would be the best way to explain what proprioception is.
Yep.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
Or lack of proprioception.
Yeah, and we do a lot of things. We do things like heavy work. Think of like weight training as an adult. It makes you feel very grounded. For kids, that could look like animal walks or jumping on a trampoline. Yes. Yeah, sorry. Vestibular. That's the one that I struggle with on the swing. It's where your head is in space. So like when you get flipped upside down, that'll mess with your vestibular system. Like a roller coaster messes with your vestibular system. And then the last one is interoception. This is a big fancy word for knowing what your body cues mean. As in, if you feel your stomach growling, we all know probably that means we're hungry. That is not an innate
that you have to go to the bathroom, skill. That you need to regulate your temperature, that you're hot, you need to take a jacket off. Like,
yes,
those aren't necessarily natural. They don't come automatically is the word I was looking for.
Yes, that body awareness is not always there for our autistic friends. So just something, again, to be mindful of.
The way I like to describe the sensory system is essentially how like your brain and body, how you perceive the world. Because we all are perceiving something a little bit different. What's spicy to me may not be spicy to you. What's comfortable to me may not be comfortable to you. And so it's just the way that our body responds to different foods and materials, and we all have different experiences.
Yes. So again, if you think about that pyramid, the sensory processing is at the bottom of the pyramid. It helps with higher level things at the top of the pyramid, like self-regulation, emotional regulation, focus, attention, and calming. If your nervous system is dysregulated, you're not going to be attending. If you're freezing right now, you're probably having a hard time listening to what I'm saying. Or if you're hot,
hungry,
yeah. If I'm up here like shaking like a leaf, I'm probably not thinking straight. I actually feel fine though, so that's good. But all of the systems are related. So that's why if we help one system, it engages the other one. So it all works hand in hand, just like our brain. There's so many connections in our brain, and they're all connected somehow, some way. And I just threw this up there, but your sensory system does develop through movement. So super important that our kids are getting out and playing and not just sitting in front of the TV all day, because you want them to develop, they play in the dirt or play with mom when she's cooking or grandma when she's cooking and play in the flour and make a mess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let them get messy.
Let them get messy. Yeah. Yeah, my husband really hates that one. But I'm like, oh, I love this. They're getting all messy when they're eating. It's so good for their sensory system and their development. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, this is going to be the fun part. So, I think it's fun. Everybody has different sensory tendencies and preferences. This is not just for our autistic friends. Every single person.
Yeah. I guess it's, again, the sensory part is so hard. It's just, it very much depends on where you are in life, what kind of day you're having, 'cause,
Yeah, it depends on the environment you're in. If you're at home, you're probably maybe more regulated, depending on who's at your house with you, than if you're at a concert and it's super loud kind of thing. But the 4 different categories are low registration, which means you need additional input to respond to stimuli, and you're kind of more passive. So think of somebody who you're calling their name and they're not responding, and you have to like go up and tap them. So that's maybe like low registration.
Or like kids that somehow manage to break everything that they touch, but they're not trying to do it like out of anger. They just play rough. They might not have. They need, when their body registers that they've pushed somebody, it's with a lot of force. So it may look like they were pushing out of like being mean, but their body just didn't register it unless they did that much force. So
Yep. And like kids who don't even notice if their face is dirty. Like we probably all know a kid like that. You're like, there's something on your face, and they have no idea. They just did not register that. Adults do that too. And then there's sensory seeking, which I feel like we see a lot in OT, because that is what maybe prompts the referral, is when the kid's a little bit of all over the place, like a little ping pong ball. This one is more easy to detect, I think. But that's when you need additional input to respond to stimuli and actively seek that input. In constant motion, running, crashing, touching. You can have a kid, this always hurts my brain when I have to think about it, who has low registration, and because they have low registration, they seek more input, if that makes sense. I know, it hurts my brain. Yeah, we'll get into it. We have sensory sensitive, which is responding readily to low threshold stimuli, but does not actively avoid the stimuli. So somebody who startles easily at an unexpected sound is a good example for that one. And then we have sensory avoiding. So responds readily to lower threshold stimuli, but actively does avoid that stimuli. So kids that are really, really picky eaters and only eat similar foods. That's an example of that one. Again, you can live in different categories, but we're going to kind of go through, this is an adult sensory profile. So as an occupational therapist, if you come in and your kid, you have sensory concerns, we're going to go through each of your sensory systems and ask you a lot of questions about each one to kind of see how the kid ticks.
Because this is the real fun part. Each sensory system can be different.
Yeah. But we're going to see in this room, I'm just going to ask you a few questions. And if you can identify with this, raise your hand, and I'll tell you where you would fall if you feel this way about yourself. Okay, here's the first question. I leave or move to another section when I smell a strong odor in the store. Okay, yeah. Okay, so that means in that situation, you are sensory avoiding. You don't like that. Your nose does not like that. Okay, next question. I add spice to my food. Okay, so that would be sensory seeking, orally sensory seeking. I don't smell things that other people say they smell. Okay. So that one is low registration. Okay, one more in the taste and smell section. I don't like strong tasting mints or candies. So like hot or cinnamon or sour candy. Okay. That one is sensory sensitivity. So do you kind of see how everybody in this room is different? So we all have sensory needs. So our job as a caregiver or a parent or a teacher is to figure out our kids' sensory needs if they can't tell us.
And also think if you had to sit through life smelling the smells, tasting the sour food, and you don't have the autonomy or voice to say like, hey, I don't like this. And you're just like constantly I don't care that you don't like it. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to do. No one, I mean, I would be yelling and hitting too, you know?
Yeah. Okay, we'll do a few more just because it's fun. I think it's fun. Okay, that's probably, I'll skip that. I'll spare you this one. Let's do visual. Okay, this is visual. I like to go places that have bright lights and are colorful. Okay. That one is sensory seeking. That one is not me. Ooh, I keep the shades down during the day when I'm home. Okay. That one is sensory avoiding. You don't want the bright light. Or you don't want your neighbors to see you. I don't know. Or both. I become frustrated when trying to find something in a crowded drawer or a messy room. Sensory sensitivity. I miss the street, building, or room signs when trying to go somewhere new. Like when you're trying to go to like a new doctor or something. That one is low registration. Okay. Are y'all liking this? Okay, we'll do more. Okay, now we're going to do touch processing. So I dislike having my back rubbed.
Depends.
Yeah, it depends on who for me. Okay. What do y'all think that one is? Oh, I know these are hard. Sensory sensitivity. That one's technically sensory sensitivity.
But they could overlap, right?
They
you
could
could be
totally
sensitive
overlap.
to it and you could avoid it, or
Yep.
just, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the person. I like how it feels to get my hair cut. Sensory seeking. We got a seeker over here, y'all. He likes spicy food and he likes to get his hair cut. I avoid or wear gloves during activities that will make my hands messy.
That'd be,
What do y'all think that one is? Yeah. I don't seem to notice when my face or hands are dirty. That one's low registration. Hopefully you figured that one out by now. You've been told enough times. Okay. Ooh, I like this one. Okay. This is with regard to activity levels. So I work on 2 or more tasks at the same time. What do y'all think that one is? It's kind of hard. Seeking. Good job. Yep. It takes me more time than other people to wake up in the morning. That's low registration.
that tracks.
I find time to get away from my busy life and spend time by myself. Avoidance. Yep. Yeah. I seem slower than others when trying to follow an activity or a task.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Low registration. Okay. Last little section, we'll do auditory because this one is, again, one that's a little bit more obvious to people because people will kind of like put their hands over their ears. I hum, whistle, sing, or make other noises often. Seeker. Our seeker strikes again. I would love to know how you were as a child. I startle easily at unexpected or loud noises. What do y'all think that one is? Sensitive, yes. I have trouble following what people are saying when they talk fast or about unfamiliar topics. Low registration with auditory. Okay, last one. I leave the room when others are watching TV or I ask them to turn it down.
I'm all over the place.
You are all over the place. That's sensory avoiding. Yeah. So you kind of get the picture there of like, and it might depend even for you where you're at, who you're with, how you feel.
And just because, so like, we have these responses to our nervous system as adaptive skills. So, right, like that's to help us survive from way back when. So, like, you hear the dinosaur in the background and you go running, like that's a good survival skill. Like, you should avoid that noise. So, like, just because you avoid things doesn't, and this is kind of coming full circle, just because you avoid things doesn't mean that you have like sensory processing disorder. But you do have sensory tendencies. So we only, like, sensory processing is only an issue when it's interfering with your everyday life. If clothes are so uncomfortable that you don't put clothes on, well, you kind of have to get dressed to go out and be in the community, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't know. And then, so, yeah, you have to eat to survive. So if you're such a picky eater or that you avoid eating anything at all, well, like, that's something we have to address. If you, I just have a, you know, you're kind of a picky eater, you want to avoid some things, but you're getting your veggies, you're getting your meats, you're getting all the things you need, then, like, that's not quite as going to be our main focus.
Yep. And I think it's very dependent on your family values, too. Because what might be a concern for me and my two little girls, I'll do an evaluation, and that is totally not a concern for them. So it's not going to be a concern for me. Because my goal is to get you and your child and your family where y'all want to be. Y'all are in charge of your care. That's kind of how we approach it. Very client-centered, very individualized. Okay, thanks for letting me do that. That was fun. Next slide. Okay, so now we get into a big, hot topic word, behavior. Technically, by definition, behavior is neither good or bad. It's just a specific action that a person does that can be observed, right? A behavior is a behavior is a behavior. We, as a society, as caregivers, label it in our head probably good or bad. But normally, again, it's a form of communication. So there are lots of factors that affect behavior. It's so small. And I'm happy to send this to you if anybody is really interested in this too. There are some external factors and internal factors that can affect behavior. So we'll start with the internal ones since we just did the sensory stuff. Is there a desire for control, especially with our toddlers who really need control? They're learning how to be a person. They're testing boundaries. Is there a desire for control? Are they tired? Did they not sleep good last night? Are they sick? Is there ineffective communication? Are they in pain? Poor emotional regulation? Poor sensory processing? And then there are external factors like task demands that are greater than their skill level. So if we're asking them and expecting them to do something that they just haven't learned to do yet, and that's really overwhelming. Changes in schedule, an unfamiliar person, an unfamiliar place. And then you can kind of think of other external factors like the noise level. That's something that you can't control inside your body. Where you're sitting in the classroom. Can you see? You know, are you comfortable in your chair?
Are you regulated?
Are you? Yeah, yes. So in our little people's world, whether you're, you know, neurotypical or not, there's so many things outside of their control. So if they can grasp onto a few things that they can control, they're going to do it. Especially if they can't communicate to you
I think
what they need.
the big picture here is just because kids are having behaviors doesn't mean it's because they're bad or they're defiant or they just really want to make you have a hard day. There's so much going on in those little brains and those little bodies. And like, even as 35 years old, sometimes I get overwhelmed by life too, and I don't know what to do about it, and I just want to freak out too. Luckily, I have some emotional regulation that I don't just freak out. But you know, that's what they're experiencing. Like they're just trying to figure out life.
Yep. And I think some people think that emotional regulation is an innate skill that we should just have. But for a lot of kids, it really does have to be taught and modeled. And normally the modeling is coming from caregivers, teachers, the church. It's coming from a lot of peers, potentially, which is good or bad. So yeah, they're constantly learning about everything in their environment. So us as the adults in their lives have to be very intentional about what we're showing them, how we're responding to things that they're doing, that this person's doing over here, because they're watching, even if we don't think they are. They're hearing, and unless they have a serious hearing impairment, they're typically hearing us, seeing us, all the things. I think I probably already touched on some of this, but like I said, behavior is just an expressive act that can take many forms and have many different meanings. Normally, it's trying to communicate something. It normally always has a purpose and is influenced by a range of factors, including that sensory processing piece. You can prevent behaviors from occurring by identifying the cause. Antecedent is just a big word for cause. So again, getting curious, like, okay, why? Why are they doing that? And why am I responding that way? Just like digging a little bit deeper versus just like an immediate, no, we don't do that. Okay, next slide. Okay, things to ask yourself. So this is where I tried to make it very practical. So the next time you're having maybe a challenging interaction, you can apply this honestly, autistic or not. You can try asking yourself these questions. What is my child trying to communicate to me through their behavior? And 9 times out of 10, we know. At least in my experience, you kind of know, they don't want to stop what they're doing. They don't want me to turn the TV off. They don't want to come eat dinner. They don't want to try to go use the restroom. We kind of know, but I think we have to get honestly even deeper than that. Are they trying to obtain a desired object or event? That might be like their favorite toy or watching their favorite show. Are they avoiding a situation? And if they're avoiding, why? Do they not like the noise? Do they not like the texture? So again, thinking about our sensory profiles. Are they trying to escape from an undesired object, event, or demand? Or is their behavior a result of sensory processing? Those are just a few of them. It's really hard to ask yourself those questions in the middle of a meltdown.
When all else fails, just start speaking your feelings out loud in the way that you wish your child would express them. Like, mommy's feeling really frustrated right now. I'm going to take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
Yes. Just really exaggerate it. Sometimes a strategy we use with some of the kids is like the size of the problem. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes I get bent out of shape over little things, believe it or not. And so I have to check myself and say, okay, Sarah, what's the size of the problem? And honestly, that makes me chuckle to myself because I'm like, I do these strategies with like 8-year-olds and I'm sitting here asking myself, what is the size of the problem? Yeah. And that kind of breaks the tension sometimes too, just for yourself to like bring you back out of the moment.
Yeah. And sometimes when you verbalize like what you're going through, when they're having a meltdown, gosh, this meltdown is really making me sad right now. I'm so sad you're having a meltdown, and I'm kind of getting frustrated too. Sometimes that stops them in their tracks because they're like, wait, she's just not telling me no? And I think it lets them know that you're a human too. You can relate to them that this is very frustrating. Or if they don't have their own voice, you can say, you look so frustrated right now. And sometimes that is very powerful. Just to acknowledge, you look like you're having a hard time right now. And giving them the space to calm, if it's safe. And then kind of talking it through when they re-engage or are regulated. It's very hard to teach in the moment when somebody is like here. Think about it. So, somebody's screaming at you and you're trying to teach them a lesson. It doesn't work. Yes. Okay. I got off track. Okay. Have we considered and addressed sensory needs? And we've talked a lot about the sensory needs. How is the environment set up? and this is a big one, have I set clear expectations and communicated those to my child in a way that they understand? So a good example that we see a lot with this is transitions. So they're having so much fun in OT, and they're doing, they're working on all these skills through play. So it is very fun, and they don't want to leave at the end of the session. Well, the expectation is we're all done and we have to get up and leave, right? Well, that is so out of their control. They want to stay. Their plan in their head is they want to stay. But, we got another friend coming in. Well, they don't care. But if we can, they want to keep going. If we can meet them where they're at, whether that's visuals, if they're not really hearing what we're saying, they're listening, but they're not hearing and processing what we're saying, can we show them a picture of the car and say, oh, it's time to get in the car. We got to go to the car. Can we do a visual timer to give them, okay, you have 60 more seconds to finish what you're doing, and then we're going to move on? Can we give them a transition object so they know when they are holding this object, we're going to the next thing? And that's a routine that you have to practice beforehand. Those are just a few examples off the top of my head. Do you have anything to add to that one?
Again, bringing it back to yourself, just if you know it's going to be hard for them, go ahead and adjust your expectations, plan for it, and then sit with them through it. Mm-hmm. You're still not going to be able to sit here and play with this toy, but I will sit with you for 5-10 minutes while you kind of work those emotions out. Because again, we need to help them regulate in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being consistent, I think, is a big thing too.
Oh, yeah.
So, your words are very powerful. So if you, especially the word no, and what I tell my own children is I say what I mean and I mean what I say, and then they know what to expect. So if you say it's time to go, that means you're actually going to go. We're not going to let this behavior dwell on so long that we don't end up leaving, because then your words don't have any meaning to them anymore, especially if they have a communication.
And nothing's 100%. So there's still going to be times where you can throw all these strategies and it's not going to work. Again, we're humans. Mm-hmm. B, the first several times you do it, it's going to be hard. It's going to be long. There's going to be tantrums. But with the consistency, that'll get shorter. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when you're addressing behaviors, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And so again, adjusting those expectations for yourself, and meeting the child where they are. It's not that you have less expectations for them. It's just you're going to get there in a different route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like what you said, expectations for yourself too. So really doing some hard work on your own reactions. And sometimes if I'm in a therapy session, I'm like, wow, I am the trigger. I am triggering the kid right now. And so kind of taking a step back and being instead of, okay, they are doing this in a way that I don't want them to do. Well, what did I do in that situation to make that better or worse? And kind of, adjusting your expectations of yourself and how you're approaching the situation.
And you can still stand there and hold those boundaries. You can say, I'm sorry that I turned the TV off too quick. I should have given you a 5-minute warning. But we're still gonna go. Mm-hmm. So again, you're meeting. You're apologizing. You're being human. Apologizing when it's appropriate to children is great, because how many adults do you know out there that don't know how to apologize? That's such a great life skill to have. Again, we're human. We're gonna mess up. Nobody's ever gonna be 100%. So I think that's a really good thing to be vulnerable with your children and show them that we all mess up. It's okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can apologize if you set them off, but you don't have to necessarily give in. You can still keep that boundary.
Yeah. I was actually talking to a parent today at work, and as we're talking, he's like, oh my gosh, it's me. I'm the problem. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean by that? And he kind of gave me an example, and I said, but you know what? It's never too late. Because the strongest relationships in life, and kind of think about a strong relationship in your life, you've been through some stuff. Rupture, repair, rupture, repair. And so when you keep doing that and you keep being vulnerable and keep figuring each other out, that's where a strong relationship happens. And it is beautiful when that happens. Yeah. Okay. Any comments, questions, personal experiences with any of that? that if anybody feels comfortable sharing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hey. Yeah. 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 Yes. 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 Yep. Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's a different environment. Yeah. 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 Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she's a fire. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for you, that again, like you're adjusting your expectations. You're not like, oh, I have to go, I have to leave, you know? So, like, you're setting yourself up for success and to be that role model and that co regulator with her. So, that's awesome.
That's huge. That
Yeah.
round of applause. Round of applause. Yes, that is huge. And you're teaching her, God willing, if she grows up to be a mom, she will do the same thing for her baby. I mean, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. You should be so proud of yourself.
Life's hard, and
Yeah.
we need community to get through it. As adults, we co-regulate. We call our friends. We still call our moms. We call our dad, whoever. So again, just keeping that in mind and bringing it back to yourself that they're just little humans, and it's even harder for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Okay, we're almost done. Here are a few early signs of dysregulation. This looks different for everyone, but these are I just thought this was a good little visual. Overly silly, hiding and disengaging, being defiant, excessive and fast talking, flushed skin, spacing out, seems unable to talk, yawning, impulsiveness, overly tired, sweating, and uncontrolled body movements.
If you do have somebody in your life that's struggling with like emotional regulation, sensory processing, and you see these things, it's really good to like narrate it out loud, kind of like Jamie was saying earlier, just like, oh, I see that your cheeks are getting flushed. Does that mean you're hot? Does that mean you need to take off your jacket? Because again, this might not be innate in their brain. It might not be automatic. We might have to kind of teach them some of these things.
Mm-hmm. And by saying it out loud, not only are you supporting their language and their vocabulary, but you're kind of like making them realize, oh, that is what that means. And then hopefully, eventually, they'll do it on their own. Yeah. Next one. Okay, some emotional regulation tips and tricks, and we've kind of gone over some of these. But just to kind of reiterate, all emotions are okay to feel, and it is important that our kids know that.
Yeah, normalize anger, normalize crying, normalize happiness, because they're human emotions. We're going to feel them. You can't avoid it.
Yeah, and we always tell kids it is okay to be sad. It is okay to be mad. What are you going to do with
all
that
emotions
feeling?
are welcomed. All actions are not.
Amen. Yes. And what we like to say in OT is we function and learn and thrive when we're calm. We're going to deviate from that calm, but our brains work best when we're calm. So when we inevitably deviate from that, how can we get back to calm? And that's going to look different for everyone. This is a huge one. Kids cannot self-regulate. Your brain, it's this big word called executive functioning. We don't have executive functioning fully developed until we're like mid 20s. It's a little later for dudes, for guys. All the women are like, yeah, we know. There's no such thing as self-regulation when you're a kid. If you have a kid that self-regulates, you are an anomaly. It takes.
You might be an avoider, or they might be an avoider.
Or they might be or they're just like not wanting to deal with that. Co-regulation is key. So we are a huge part of that, especially if you have somebody in your life that needs extra support in that area. They need you to co-regulate with them. They need your nervous system to be calm so that their nervous system can be calm, whatever that looks like for you. And that will build that connection that we've been talking about. Big emotions and feelings are very real for some of our kids for all those sensory reasons. So kind of talking about the size of the problem. In their little bodies, this feels like a 911. It's a big problem. I'm about to throw down, and it's a full body experience kind of problem. In our minds, we were like, this is such a small problem. But we've got to meet in the middle somewhere there.
I always validate. You don't have to agree. You don't have to it could still be a small problem, but validate that you understand how they're feeling. I kind of when I talk to parents, relate this back to if you have a significant other and y'all are in an argument, and for me, I'll say if my husband and I are in an argument and he thinks what I'm upset about is silly, if he tells me that that's silly while I'm upset, it's only going to upset me more versus if he's like, oh, babe, I'm so sorry that that upset you. And in his mind, he might be like, well, that's stupid. I would be like, oh, thank you so much. I'm going to respond totally different.
Yeah.
Well, so are kids. So I think, again, just validating their experience, even if it is dramatic from our perspective.
Accommodating their needs as appropriate so that they can function, and giving them a way to express their emotions, especially when verbal communication is different. So maybe the head banging is a good example, because Carly, the girl that we saw the video, she was a head banger and she used that to regulate. Well, if we know they're going to do that, and that's a little bit of an extreme example, how can we do that in a safe way? Or a kid that is really rambunctious. Well, how can we let them get that emotion, get that energy out in a safe way? Do they need to go run around at the park?
Instead of screaming at you out loud, can they scream into a pillow?
Yep.
You're still getting the same thing. It's just more of an acceptable way to do it.
Yeah. And again, this is very individualized. So if you have specific questions, feel free to come ask us later. We've heard a lot of interesting things. We've heard it all in our careers. And then I just listed these programs. This would probably be more for kids that are really struggling in this area, that need a guide almost. So we use these programs in OT to kind of guide our treatment. So zones of regulation, the alert program, and then Superflex social thinking are 3 well-known programs that a lot of therapists will use. And then the whole family ends up using the language, which is kind of funny. You learn a lot as an adult too. Okay. This one, take notes on this one. This one is much easier said than done. You'll probably catch yourself in the next day. You're like, oh, I did that thing that Jamie said don't do. Because I do it in my own life, and I do this every single day for a living. It's really hard to catch yourself. When you give a direction, especially to somebody who needs extra support, or who maybe doesn't understand as easily as the next person, you want to get their attention first, whatever that looks like for them. Some kids actually pay attention better when they are not looking at you. And I think that's important for us to realize with our autistic friends. Again, sometimes that visual looking at you in the eye, that's a lot for them. So they're actually paying better attention when it's kind of in their peripheral. So just keep that in mind. So whatever that looks like, make sure you have their attention. Give one direction at a time. Only say a direction once. This one's really hard. But let them process what you said. Give them a little bit of time, unless it's a safety issue. If they're running in the road, no. But when you can, say it one time, keep it simple and short, be specific and be positive, and tell them exactly what to do. So what I mean by this is, if you say to your kid, don't run, what are they going to do? Because all they heard is the word run. So what we say in OT, walking feet or slow please. You have to tell them exactly what to do, especially for our kids who are having a harder time processing what you're saying. They only hear the last word you said, typically.
So, like,
Yeah.
go get your shoes and socks on and meet me at the door. Well, that's 3 directions right there. Plus, you can say put their sock. Did I say socks, shoes and socks? Or
Yeah, you did.
I meant to say go put your shoes and jacket on and meet me at the door. And so then you like skip the socks process. So like go to each one. Like put your socks on, shoes on.
Really
Go
break
to the
it
door.
down,
Yeah.
if that's a hard skill for them. Yeah, use do instead of don'ts. Like, don't run. You tell them what to do, especially in a meltdown. I've found that to be very helpful. Like, don't cry, don't hit. Yeah, that's exactly what we don't want them to do, but tell them what they can do. If you are going to use your hands in that way, you could say, hit this pillow in the moment. Short, simple, hit the pillow, or hands here. You know, like tell them what to do with their hands. Giving extra assistance as needed, and really, especially our toddlers or kids that maybe present like a toddler, even if they're a little bit older, give them a choice if you can. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to eat dinner and you really want them to eat everything you made, but do you want to eat the chicken first or do you want to eat the carrots first? You're still going to get what you want, but they feel control over the situation. One that I really like to use in my personal and professional life is, we're going to do a transition, right? And I said, okay, do you want to walk by yourself or do you want to hold my hand? But either way, we're going. But then they feel like a sense of control in that situation. And then after you give the direction, you got to give them a second. Especially our kids that have trouble with processing. You got to give them a second to be like, okay, she just said this. I really don't want to do that. Or maybe they will. But give them a second. Try not to repeat the direction, because rewording kind of confuses kids sometimes. Give them physical guidance to follow the direction if they need that, visual cue and tactile cue. And then if they do it, praise it. Praise it hard if they like praise. What you draw attention to, typically you're going to see more of. So if your child or a child gets a lot of negative attention because they have behaviors, you're probably going to see more behaviors because they're getting your attention, whether good or bad, from that behavior. I'm not saying ignore every single behavior, but I think being intentional about what you're drawing attention to and noticing when it's a desired action. Yeah. And then I just threw in the little visual timer thing, could be helpful for transitions. Next one. Okay, we're wrapping it up, I promise. We're getting long-winded. Just a few other things that kind of came to my mind as I was wrapping this up. We have to regulate ourselves before we try to co-regulate with a child. It's very hard to co-regulate with a child if you're really worked up yourself. Sometimes you have to fake it too, and that's okay. We won't judge. You got to use a strengths-based approach. If we're coming in hot with all these expectations and they do not care, they absolutely do not care about whatever it is, putting their socks on. We really want them to learn to put their socks on by themselves. They're just not going to do it. We have to think of ways to make that something that's going to motivate them. Something, do we need to go get some Paw Patrol socks? Like thinking about what they like, what they're good at. Are they really good at finding things? Can you hide stuff in the socks so that they're like, oh, this isn't so bad? Stuff like that. Just little things. Use what will work on their worst day to set up for success. So if you know a kid has a tendency to not do well with transitions, well, if we have a really good day with a transition, let's do that again. Let's lean into it and have that available to them. So when they are having a rough day, they know the expectation. They know they can do it with this strategy. anything else you think to add? Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah, yeah. Yes. So a lot of times a speech therapist will be the one to set this up, but we love using AAC and OT too, because we can work on the motor aspect of it and just like them getting to know us and communicating with
Also,
us.
modeling it when they're learning it is great for everybody in their lives to also try to work it and model how to use it.
Yeah.
It's like it can be any kind of like, I'm going to say iPad, but it doesn't have to necessarily be an iPad. And then there's like programs that you can get through insurance a lot of times. And then there are icon pictures and they say the word. So like you could say, I want drink, and it might be like a picture of an eye and a picture for one, which is like this.
And then a drink. It's a visual, so like kids don't even have to know how to read. But a lot of kids will, like, there's animals on there. If you're playing an animal game with a kid and you're like, do you want the pig? And you touch pig and it says pig. Or do you want the cow? And then you see if they touch one of those. And then you give them that. And that, in their brain, connects, okay, when I just touched that button, I got exactly what I wanted. And it makes their words have meaning to them.
And there's a lot of, again, a speech therapist would probably be able to tell you better, but a lot of research out there. So some families are hesitant to use AAC because they feel like that's going to like limit the verbal communication. But a lot of like the research that's been done out there says that it's more of a bridge. So just because a child starts using AAC does not mean they won't eventually use words. It's very child dependent on if that happens, but it's not a hindrance to using their words, and it gives them an outlet to communicate potentially.
Yeah, and it actually exposes them. You can kind of think of it as this visual dictionary. It exposes them to words that they actually may have never heard before, and then they'll be coming home saying, hippopotamus, and the mom's like, I didn't know they knew what that was. We've never been to the zoo. Well, they saw it on their device, and they were exploring it. And a speech therapist said this to me one time. She said, think of when a kid is exploring their AAC device, and to us it just sounds like, cow, more, pig, cup, blah, blah, and we're getting like overstimulated. That is them babbling. If they've never had a spoken word, they're babbling on their little device, and that completely changed my perspective of them doing that, because if they, again, don't have spoken words that they never babbled as a baby, or maybe they did and then they stopped, then now they're finding their voice, and how cool is that? Whether we think it's appropriate what they're doing on there or not, there's nothing bad on there, but best case scenario is that they start to use it functionally, and they bring it to you and say, I want XYZ, or you're playing a game and they click more because they're having fun, or they really are not liking it and they click all done. So yeah. Does that kind of answer that? Okay. Okay, this is my favorite quote ever. And it says, you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. And I am in no way qualified to stand up here and preach, but I feel like this is so applicable to like Christianity and the Bible. There's nowhere in the Bible that says the word autism. But there are so many places in there that says like we were created as individuals. We need to be accepting. You need to help me out here. We were fearfully and wonderfully made, and that includes our autistic friends. And we've got to try harder. I think we're getting better as a society, but we've got to try harder to try to understand them, because they are the coolest people when you get to know them and can get them regulated and can kind of learn their quirks and what they're good at. It just takes
When you
acceptance.
stop pushing your expectations on them and just let them be a human and show their cool little quirky personality, or sassy or whatever it may be, it is really cool just to take a step back and enjoy them for who they are.
Yeah. That's all.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Yes. And like even it can happen spontaneously too. If you watch them have a positive interaction or, clean up their toys or something, say, I loved how you just did that. Don't just say, you didn't clean up your toys today. Because that attention that you're giving, if we can, and you have to be really intentional about it. Because when you're going a million miles an hour in your daily life and you're trying to get this kid here and this kid there and, cook dinner and all this, you have to be very intentional about it.
And with the choices, depending on what it is, like, you can do it's called a forced choice. So that's like you are providing two options that you would want. So like if it's dinner time, if it's homework time, do you want to use the blue marker or do you want to use a crayon? If it's bedtime, do you want the Paw Patrol pajamas or do you want Spider-Man?
Yes. Yeah. But we're still putting our pajamas on.
Right. Do you want to take a bath first or read our book first? So you're giving them kind of choices, but it's still in the back end, you're still kind of in control.
And if you give them a choice and they still say no, because I'm experiencing this in my own life, then I normally say, then mommy is going to have to pick for you. You can take control of the situation by picking A or B, or I'm going to have to pick for you, but we're still doing whatever we need to do. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Correct.
It's so unpredictable for them that sometimes that consistency does help. Yeah.
And give yourself grace too, because things are gonna happen. And I think, like, if you're not consistent, acknowledging that, if that upset them, like, oh, for me, mommy should have given you a warning, or acknowledging that you did not meet their needs, maybe, so that they feel understood. Even if you don't think they fully understand what you're saying, I still think it's so powerful to be vulnerable with them and acknowledge I might have messed up in that situation.
Because change is a part of life. So, yes, we want things to be consistent to some, norm. Like, it's nice to have a routine. I know where I'm going to wake up and go in the morning, and I know, generally what I'm going to do. But change does happen. So, yeah, it's okay to have change in there. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's encouraged, because if they never feel change and then all of a sudden something changes, that's really scary. So.
Yeah. And if anybody has any specific scenarios, anything hard that you're dealing with, we can talk with you here or privately too to help problem solve. What other questions do you guys have? And girls, yes.
Does color play a role on
What do you mean?
Does it affect the child's behavior?
Like if they're wearing them or if they're in a bright room? It totally could, yes. It depends on the person. Just like when we were asking all those questions, some kids love that visual input of bright colors. Some kids hate it and they need low lighting to be calm. They like to be in maybe a tent or just like a darker room. It's totally dependent on your kid. That's where connecting with them and figuring them out is so important. Okay.
He's writing these words, and he looked at me like, "Did you notice it?" And I said, "Oh no, that is amazing!" And I'll start clapping, and then he goes.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'm wondering, how do you? I'm wondering, first of all, is he understand what he's writing? Because he's probably like third grade.
Right. Yeah. That is so hard. That is so hard to know the answer to that. I have personally worked with him a few times, and he is so bright. So I have no doubt if he wrote a word, this is how you could test it, and you have a picture, like say he writes the word, what's a word that he wrote?
Return.
Ooh, that's a hard one. Okay, return. Is he looking at a keyboard, I wonder?
Some kids, like with autism, are hyperlexic, so that means that's why there's numbers and letters, and so they can read words and know like the pattern of phonics. Now, sometimes they do attach a meaning to it, and sometimes they've seen it and it's that visual memory and they're writing it. So it could be both, and it could be maybe he's just seen it and he doesn't know the meaning yet, but he will. Kind of like that AAC device, if that's his way of kind of communicating and understanding words. So I guess it is hard to.
It's hard. I was trying to think like to test to see if he has meaning for that. Like a visual return is kind of hard. You would have to pull up a picture of like a keyboard or like with the word return on it, and then maybe like a picture of a fish and say which one's return, and just see if he could pick it out maybe.
Different word. It's like
Yeah, or if it's more of like an object, like I'm thinking cat. If he wrote the word cat and you showed him a picture of a cat and a picture of a dog, you could say, well, do you know where the cat is? And then if he points at the cat, which I feel like he totally would point at the cat, then you're like, oh my gosh, he does know what that word means. And he is totally reading that, which is so cool. Yeah, yeah. And he has beautiful handwriting. Beautiful. He really does.
both of y'all have your hands up.
I feel like there could be a lot of layers to that. Like, I would ask yourself first why they don't like to be touched. Is there any trauma in their background? Is it just that they just get away from me kind of thing? Being mindful of that. And then, I mean, depending on the age, if you don't have to touch them, I would honor it. If you can. You know, unless it's a safety thing, then you're going to have to, nope. Can you give me like a specific example? Okay. Yeah. And I wonder if he just had, like, when he did, he felt that throughout his whole body, and he did not like that.
Like the back rub question.
Yeah,
You know?
like the back rub question. Some people love it. Some people, do not touch
Creeps
me.
them out. Like, yeah. Like, don't,
Yeah. Then if it was me, I would just, knowing that, I would be intentional about trying not to get in his space, giving him space.
Or, you know, verbally warning, I'm about to grab your arm.
Yep.
You know, so like
verbally, yeah. Like if you're going to the store, like, I have to hold your hand, I'll let go as soon as you are able to hold the cart. Something like that. Giving him again, setting the boundary and the expectation, but giving him like an out at the end.
And then you had a question as well.
How would you like encourage a kid to be like inspired to do well like in school, like academic wise? Like how would you do that in a way where they feel like it's rewarding to actually do it?
That's a hard one, but
Yeah.
it's a great one.
I'll let you start since you work in the schools now.
For me, it's starting out what do they like? What are they interested in? And then how can I use those interests and apply that to something else? So, like, again, my job as an OT is never to change the child, just to help expand their world. So, you know, if they're really into Spider-Man, you know, maybe you have little Spider-Man tokens that you're counting with math, or maybe you count how many people Spider-Man saved, or maybe you have them act out Spider-Man and go save 3 little figurines, and then you're still working on counting, you're still doing these things. It just looks a little bit different, which in the schools is a little bit harder, but if you have somebody that you can work with more one-on-one and in a different environment, like starting there, finding their interest, and like, how do I make what they like fit into this other thing that I feel like might be beneficial for them to learn. Yeah, just like take their whatever they really like, just how can you incorporate that into what you want them to learn?
And depending on the age, if you can make it playful in any way. I mean, think about your best memories when you were a kid. It was not when you were sitting at a desk doing a worksheet. It was when you were playing. So kids learned through play. And that's like our biggest peeve as OTs with the schools is we have these kids sitting at desks all day.
On
That's not how
computers.
that is not how we're wired to learn. We are wired to learn by going outside, getting in the dirt, doing hands-on activities. And granted, teachers' hands are really tied. They've got a lot of kids in the class. But on that note too, working with teachers, like we work directly with teachers. If you don't mind me sharing about Noah, I went to his class because we were anticipating that transition was going to be difficult for him. And I had a very long conversation with his teacher about, okay, how can we get Noah to transition from doing these things that he loves, like the letters, to going to the bathroom, or he's loving his little magnet tiles, and how can we get him to transition to going outside, and just like problem solving with everybody a part of their team. And the teacher's a huge part of the team. Think about how many hours a day some of these kids are at school. And you can do that as their caregiver. You can absolutely set a meeting with their teacher and say, hey, these are the things that they love. Is there any way we can incorporate this into what they're learning at school? And 9 times out of 10, teachers are very willing to work with you. What I have found. Yeah, they care. They just, sometimes they don't know.
Hands are tied.
Yeah. They've got a lot of standards they have to hit.
A lot of red tape.
That's a good question, though.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you so much for having us. It's an
thanks for letting
honor.
us take up y'all's time.
Jesus